For our steamroller printing event, there are recommendations on the website for the thickness of wood, and I believe the maximum is 3/4 of an inch and the minimum is 1/2 an inch. I would say we might even be able to push the minimum by using another material that is 1/4 of an inch, but it's a little harder to find than, say, 1/2 and 3/4 inch boards. Now, there are different woods that you can use. You can carve on any piece of wood, but what is going to yield the best results, what is going to carve perhaps the easiest, and what is going to cause maybe the less frustration should be some of the factors that you consider. Now, two major types that I recommend actually both involve a MDF or a medium density fiberboard, either core or exterior. So what I've got here is a 3/4 inch piece of MDF board, and that is going to be fairly soft to carve. It'll be somewhat similar to linoleum, but less expensive than linoleum. It will also dull your blades very quickly, right? Because this is mostly a fiber, or like a sawdust mixed with glue, essentially, that holds it together. So I'm going to take a little area of this and I'm just going to carve so you can see how easy that is to carve. Now, you probably can't see those marks very well. All right. One thing that I like to do is stain the board, no matter what I'm using, so that you can see the marks that you're carving. I'll show that in just a moment. Another type of board, which is kind of difficult to come by, I've only found it at McCoy's, and only at certain McCoy's. The one in San Marcos is the one I found it at the most. What it is, it's a 1/4 inch piece of birch veneer on both sides with a MDF core. All right, so it has this same material, the MDF material, in the middle, and then it has a nice veneer of birch on the outside. This is also really easy to carve because the veneer is very, very thin. Although it has a grain, MDF doesn't have a grain. So you may see in some of your carving marks, when you're carving with the grain, and the grain is running this way, right, the length of the fibers of the veneer, will make very clean marks. And if I go against the grain, it should still be very, very clean, especially if my tool is sharp. But you may feel a little more resistance carving this way than you do when you're carving this way. Right? I mentioned the idea of staining your black. You can do that in a number of ways. You can use marker, which is probably the most laborious way, but you can also stain it with acrylic paint or with oil-based paint. Anything that will give it a color, really, and what you're doing is putting some of that, say I'm using acrylic paint, I'll use really inexpensive kind of bottled acrylic paint, squeeze some out on the board, wipe it into the board, and wipe as much off as I possibly can, right? That's what's been done to this board in some way. I think it's probably been spray painted with different sprays, it looks like to me, because it has kind of different colors. But you can see what happens when I go to carve on this. You immediately see your marks. Right? Now, if I'm doing a drawing on the block and I'm using, say, a marker, I can stain after I've done the drawing with the marker, or I can stain before and do the marker drawing on top. Doesn't really matter that I've experienced, but as you can see, it does make carving much easier because you're seeing that light-dark contrast show up. So you can tell very, very quickly where your marks are.